Hey guys, Solomon here. Welcome to the Chess Giant. I hope you guys are having a great day. You may have seen my recent video on what I consider to be the most underrated gambit for black in the game of chess as a whole. And that gambit is the Norwegian rat gambit or the Norwegian gambit. Okay, no matter what you call it, very underrated. It's sound, it's rare, which means that opponents aren't well prepped for it. It works against either e4 or d4 if they transpose into this setup. And it works at the top levels. In fact, we're about to see that as Magnus Carlsen utilizes this opening as black against Grandmaster Boris Savchenko. And it's just a great game. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And it really shows a lot of the themes, ideas, motives, and strategies that comes out of the Norwegian. And, I definitely learned a lot from it. So I hope you will too. The game starts out with e4. Now here we see, Magnus, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time, play this move of g6. Okay, now the reason I say that e4 or d4 can transpose into this setup is because in this game we have the move of d4. If you see the move of d4, you can play the modern. If you see the move of e4, you can play the modern. These are by far the two most popular options in chess. And when you play something like the modern, there's a good chance they're going to use their other central pawn to take control of that center and go from there. Okay, what are we going to do in this kind of situation? Knight f6 with their Norwegian defense, attacking this pawn on e4. And as we covered the theory in the recent video against e5, we're going to play knight h5. Now, I've said it, right? I say it all the time, okay, to my students, this kind of theme of not bringing your knight to the edge of the board. Okay, when I'm visiting elementary schools, I'm not telling kids, hey, bring your knight to the h file, bring your knight to the a file. But once you hit a certain level in chess, you start to learn when and where to bend the rules a little bit. And in this case, this knight is coming here for a purpose. Okay, first off, it's covering very key dark squares like g3 and f4, but it's also giving us the ability to play d6 and attack that overextended pawn. Sometimes use a fianchettoed bishop to put even more pressure on it, not to mention this move of knight c6 or c5 as well. So we're allowing white to push like crazy in the center, but we're going to go after that center for the rest of the game. Okay, this is very similar to the ideas of the Peart's defense or the Owens defense. The modern here, we're letting white take the center, but we're going to go after that center for the rest of the game. Now here in the game, Grandmaster Savchenko plays this move of bishop e2, doubling up on this knight. Now there's a couple of moves here. I think knight g7 is actually a solid option. Knight g7, nothing wrong with it. Followed by d6, starting to chip away. But what I have been recommending is this move of d6. It's a ton of fun. You're putting pressure on e5. And here after e takes, we capture back with the queen. White captures on h5, obviously. The world champion, soon to be world champion at this point in time is 2010, Magnus Carlsen, takes back on the h file. And, the game continues with knight c3, but I want to mention this, okay? If queen takes h5, there's a very fun line for black that I recommend you memorize. In fact, if you want to play this line at all, this opening at all, I highly recommend that you memorize it. This is not one of those openings where you can just learn it in 10 minutes and start playing and have a flexible setup. This is one of those openings. This is one of those gambits where you need to play accurately. If you do, you're going to be more than fine. But either side, one slip, and that's the game, okay? Here we have this move of knight c6, not taking the pawn right away, okay? Now, that's not a blunder. It's not like black's losing there, but I think it's better for black to put pressure on the center and look to capture back with the knight. And if a move like c3, let's just keep putting pressure on white here. If a move like queen f3, e5, and talk about an advantage in development, attacking chances, initiative. And if g3, saving the pawn, we have a beautiful tactic here with knight takes d4 and queen c6. Are we down a piece? Yeah. But we're currently attacking a rook that is hanging and a bishop that is hanging. White can't stop both. And if you try to save your rook with a move like queen f3, okay, we take the bishop. Boom, we take a pawn. All of a sudden, we're up in material. Winning position here for black, bishop h6. We got to go after the white camp right now. I mean, this king is very vulnerable to attack. And, if a move like knight f3, we can capture on d2. If a move like rook b1, hey, this doesn't work. This doesn't work because we take on d2 with check. If the queen captures back, thank you for the rook. And if the king moves, then we're just up a pawn and a piece. I'll take it. Okay, not to mention that, we can just get the queen safe and we're fine. So going back, okay, I just wanted to mention that line. If queen takes h5, you're down a pawn, but that's okay. You're going to play knight c6, and Stockfish actually likes black there. Okay, so this is not one of those gambits where, you know, we give up a pawn and then it's like, oh my gosh, we're -4, but we hope the opponent makes a mistake or else we're done. No, we have a fine position. We just got to play it correctly. Okay, knight c6, attack that pawn, rook g8, and if you see a move like, you know, g3, c3, white trying to hold it together, capture on d4, queen c6, beautiful tactical idea, and it turns out that white is simply underdeveloped, and this line shows that. Now again, in the game, we have this move of knight c3. You know, Magnus Carlsen plays this move of rook g8, attacking this pawn on g2. White looks to save the pawn, and we now have a very accurate chess here from Carlsen. I mean, bishop g4 followed by bishop f5. Some of you might be wondering, why in this position didn't Carlsen just play bishop f5? Why would Carlsen move the same piece twice? Well, in this case, it's to provoke a weakness, okay? We have this move of bishop g4. If you play a move like knight f3, your knight's pinned. That's not good. Knight e2 is also not a good idea because of your light squares being so weak. And if f3, we bring the bishop back. The question is, would we rather have white's pawn on f2 or f3? And the answer is f3 because white's pawns are getting more exposed, more, you know, kind of forged ahead. And oftentimes, the further you push a pawn, the weaker your king, the weaker your position, and the weaker the pawns, okay? Not to mention great outposts. So instead of playing here right away, Carlsen provokes a weakness and then comes back. Beautiful chess. Okay, bishop f4 is played, queen b6, keeping the pressure on the white camp here. Knight ge2 is played. Now, this is actually Carlsen's first mistake of the game. Okay, arguably the only. I think there's one other point where he played a little bit inaccurately, but he was still just fine. In this case, Carlsen played the move of knight c6, but he should have went with this move of e6. Okay, the reason for that is that it covers d5. So knight d5 options are not available. And if a move like knight e4 trying to fork our king or rook, that ain't going to happen. We got to play a move here like bishop g7, fianchettoing our bishop, followed by fast development, right? Knight c6. Anytime when you're playing this gambit as black and your opponent takes on h5, we're not castling kingside, right? We're putting that rook on g8, and we're eventually castling queenside, okay? Beautiful position here for black. Tons of pressure on white's center. e5 ideas in the air, just breaking this game open, and I love black's game. Now, in the game, we have the move knight c6, slight inaccuracy because this allows knight d5. But, you know, after this move, queen a5 check, white has to play very accurately. In fact, there's only one move here, which they played, to survive this game, okay? And that move is knight ec3. Anything else loses, okay? If you block with the queen, the bishop, if you run with the king, guess what? We're just taking your knight. Thank you. We're up material. And if I hate to say this, but if you're down material against Magnus Carlsen and you have nothing to show for it, it's probably not going to go well. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's the only move that white has here. Now, this move of bringing the knight back, does this work? No. About a -2 advantage for black. We castle queenside. We're eyeing up directly against the queen, following this pawn on d4. And one little move like castling kingside, e5, boom, attacking the bishop, right? Attacking the pawn. You want to defend it. It's interesting in this position because we have 3 attackers. White has 3 defenders. So we take, by the way, in this kind of situation, if we're the one initiating it, if we're the ones attacking the piece that's defended, we have to have one more attacker. Now here we have 3 and 3. So technically, white's going to win this, but black has a follow-up, right? So here we take, they take, we take, they take, we take, blah, 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 blah. White won the trade. But then there's this move, bishop c5. And yeah, that's it. The queen's about to fall. Black is crushing. So with that move of queen a5, I mean, white here, you know, going with that move of knight e to c3. And we now have rook c8, trying to put some defense on that c7 pawn. Now here, white could have captured on c7, right? I mean, that's a move, right? But the issue here is that white would have given up 2 minor pieces for a rook and a pawn. And 99% of the time in chess, 2 minor pieces, 3 plus 3, is better than a rook and a pawn, 5 plus 1. It's 6 versus 6, but just the way that chess works, 2 minor pieces flying all over the place can do a lot more in almost every single scenario than a rook and a pawn. Okay, so here, sure, you have a rook, but they're in the corners. We have 3 minor pieces which are about to get activated, and start flying around and having fun, playing some good chess. Okay, so after that move, rook c8, white wisely did not take on c7, but instead played this move of a3. Here, Carlsen just goes, I'm going to fiend cut on my bishop. We have b4, and notice here, there's actually no safe square for this queen. No safe square except for a6, and that's exactly where Carlsen goes, followed by bringing that queen right back to a5, reinitiating the pin. And this game's fascinating to me because after takes and we capture back, I mean, we're down 2 points in material, guys. We're down 2 points. But notice the amount of pressure that white is under. We have two bishops very active in this position, putting pressure on the white camp. We have a queen pinning this knight on c3, only defended by one piece, which is also attacked. Okay. Now here, white could have tried taking on c7. We capture back with the rook. The bishop takes. We're down 5 points in material. What's the issue here for white? Well, they're underdeveloped. Okay, this king on e1 doesn't have great defense. We take with check. You can't even block because we take the rook on a1. And if the king runs, I mean, okay, we take a pawn. We could take on d4 the next move, check, put more eyes on this rook here. White's position is not looking too good. So we go back to this move. White did not want to enter into that line of giving up their knight and having their king run all over the place. So we see instead this move of knight to b4, trying to block the queen's access. Makes sense. But now Carlsen plays this move of c5. Okay, by the way, guys, if you're down a material in a game almost every single time, that means you're losing. Okay, now the reason I say that is because usually when someone is down material, and I'm not just saying this to people that make mistakes. I'm saying this to myself too, right? Most of the time in a game where I'm down material, most of the time I'm losing. Most of the time I'm up material, I'm objectively better. But there are some instances, for example, if you're Magnus Carlsen, where you give up some material on purpose to gain compensation. And that's the whole idea of a gambit, right? I mean, a lot of you guys probably play the King's Gambit, the Danish Gambit, the Scotch Gambit, I could keep going. The England, the Stafford, blah, blah, blah. You're giving up material, but in return, you're getting that development. You're getting that initiative, that, those attacking chances, that piece activity, all that kind of stuff. And that's great. But what I'm trying to get at is that when you are down in material, you got to put the pressure on the opponent. Okay. Because if you don't, you're just down material. And who wants to just be down? Right? If I walk by your board and you're down material, I want to see you attacking the king like crazy. Boom. I'm down a piece. I'm down a pawn, but I have great attacking chances. That's a lot better than, oh, wow, this game's really closed. It's really boring, but you're just down a piece, right? So here, Carlsen continuing to put the pressure on white. Notice that if you take this pawn, the knight on c3 falls. Now, obviously, a bishop doesn't move like that, so let me retry that. Okay, I should have this down by now. Take the knight on c3 with check, attacking the king, attacking the rook. So white's in trouble here. I mean, tons of pressure on this side of the board. We see this move of knight coming right back. We capture. Okay, this knight's pinned. White continues with this move of queen e2, and we now have bishop e6. I mean, as if there wasn't enough pressure already, right? Just putting more pressure on white's pieces. Now, this move of, queen b5 was actually the computer recommendation. Okay, but against that, we're still okay. We're simply going to take and then take on d5. Now, after takes here, let's calculate real quick, right? Would we rather, in this position, lose the exchange, right? Or lose this bishop? Okay, now obviously we would get a pawn there, but anytime you can lose a piece or lose the exchange, lose the exchange. Okay, it's 2 points versus 3. A full piece is way different in my mind than the exchange. So in this case, rook takes c7 is definitely the move. There's a couple options we have here. We can play king d7. We could take on d7. A lot of different stuff that can happen. But going back, instead of seeing this move of queen b5, we have bishop takes c7. This is an error from Grandmaster Boris. And, the bishop attacks the queen. We now play queen c5. Magnus Carlsen down 2 points in material at move 21. Neither king has castled. But notice this. This bishop on c7 attacked by 2 of our pieces. This knight on d5 attacked by 2 of our pieces. And this knight on c3 attacked by a pawn and a queen. Every single one of these pieces is attacked twice. And They're all only defended once. That's it. They all have one defender each. So, I mean, white here, you're up a piece, but I mean, against, Magnus Carlsen, you got 3 different pieces that he can take at will. White decides to go with this move of bishop e5, but in that case, we simply capture the knight on d5. Now, this is the other little error that I mentioned earlier in this video. D takes d3 is the computer option. Okay, nearly -3. But after bishop takes d5, it's still over -1 for Magnus, close to -1.5. And okay, we take, the queen captures back. We have another trade here because, I mean, their bishop was attacked twice. They don't want to keep losing pieces. And now castling kingside. White finally gets to castle. We now see this move of rook g6. By the way, if you were looking at h4, computer move. Great idea for black. But we see this move of rook g6. Look into this square of e6. Okay. Very active. Notice now we're up upon a material. Now, the question is, we're up upon, does white have something to show for it? Earlier, Magnus Carlsen was down a piece, all right, or down a piece for a pawn, but he had something to show for it. Does white have something to show for it? Not much. I mean, the one thing you could argue is that, Carlsen's structure is a little bit all over the place, but we are up a pawn. So even if you win one, we're at even material, and very active piece play from Carlsen as well. Rook a d1 is played, rook c3, throwing this rook into the action, attacking a3, looking towards the e3 square. This rook comes over. White is threatening a mate in 1. So we see the move of rook e6, just cutting that queen off. The second that queen runs away, we have a trade, and this move of e6. Okay, e6, just, a solid move from black. f4 is played, and now we have h4. Now, you might notice that a lot of grandmaster players are big on h5, h4, a5, a4, just throwing their sideline pawns. The reason for this is that even going to the beginning of the game, I'm just going to go to the starting position here, okay? Whenever you move any of these pawns, you're technically weakening 2 squares forever. And that's okay. That's just how chess works. But you got to be mindful of the fact that when a pawn moves in chess, you are weakening some squares forever. For example, right now, we have 2 pawns on this square. I mean, is a knight going to try to get here? No. Is a knight going to try to get here right now? Probably not, right? We have 2 pawns attacking it. But the moment that I move this pawn, all of a sudden for the rest of this game, I only have 1 defender on d6. That's it. Only 1 potential defender on d5. And that's why against something like knight c3, c5 is just a bad idea. Because now, at some point in the game, white could play knight d5. Is there a pawn that can kick it out? No. Right? So that's something to be mindful of. Now notice though, if we move the h or the a pawns, right? Now, by the way, guys, I'm not recommending that you play h5, move 1. Please don't do that, okay? But notice here, only 1 square was weakened, not 2, right? Only 1 square is weakened, whereas any other pawns besides the a and h, 2 squares become weakened. On top of that, they have the backings of the rooks, right? At least in that first position, okay? So we go back later on to this game with this move of h4. Now here, the rook doesn't back up that pawn, but if white decides to take, I mean, their pawn structure is in shambles. We just made a g pawn become an h pawn, and this king is not doing too great, okay? If the king wasn't here, white might be okay, but I mean, this king, we're slicing and dicing all over the place. A move like queen c5, we're doubling up on c2. We have d3 check ideas as well. I mean, nearly -2 for black, and a great game. So we have this move of rook e5 against that queen c4, doubling up against this pawn. Here what white should have done is tried to trade on e2 at all costs. Like, black here is the one with more activity, more strength, and more attacking chances. When you're the one being attacked, you gotta try to trade down, right? Trade down with that. Queen g2 is also a solid idea, but oftentimes that would result in not checking so much depending on the position, but also just offering up a trade. So if I was playing as white, I'd just offer a trade here. Like, even if I go down in the endgame with rooks, it's not ideal, but I got to survive here, okay? But instead we have this move of g takes h. But now we have rook takes e2. And I mean, talk about a monster rook. I mean, just dominating that second rank. Rook c1 with check. The rook ends up blocking, and we now have d3. This queen has no checks. where it won't get captured. Right? I mean, this queen is doing a great job of blocking out checking squares. D8 is covered by the king. This queen really isn't doing much, but just defending that rook on E1. That's it. And if you take the rook on C1 here, which didn't happen in the game, we can take back with the queen, maybe throw another check in there, and then push. We're only one square away now from making a second queen. White here, they can't just make a move and defend it, because then, okay, I mean, we'll trade, that's fine, we're up a queen. So here, white's only chance is to get a perpetual check, but, you know, if you check, okay, we run away, C5 can't happen. If you check here, we run again. If you check here, we block. If you check here, right, well, the queen takes, okay? And again, after F6, you're out of checks. You're out of safe checks. The second you take a pawn, I'd probably just play queen G6, and then the next move, promote. A great blocker here with the queen of queen E7. We got 2 queens. You got 1. Black is winning. So after the move D3, we instead see the move of king F2, white trying to make a run for it instead of just taking and letting us make a second queen. But here we have queen takes F4, right? Rook C2, white resigns, because the fact of the matter is that this king is about to get mated. Okay, it's a mate in 3. If you want to block with the rook or with the queen, I mean, go ahead. We can just take it. And if you play a move like, you know, king H3, we have queen F3 checkmate. We have rook takes H2 checkmate. If king G1, we take on H2. King F1, I think we have 4 different checkmates here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. That's all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed this game. Very sharp, very dynamic play from Carlsen. And again, I'm a big fan of this line, okay? Bringing that knight to the edge. And if white wants to go for it, fine, do it. If you want to play G4, I'll go back to G7 and start going after your pawn, overextended pawn on G4 immediately. And if you decide to take, okay, I take back with the queen, you can take all you want. I am going to play active chess from this position. Whether you take this pawn or not, I'm bringing my knight out. I'm bringing that rook to G8, developing my bishop, castling queenside as quickly as I possibly can. And yeah, I mean, this is a dangerous gambit for black, and Carlsen just showed it. Let me know what you thought down in the comment section below, and let me know if you have any questions on this system for black. Again, I made a video on it. I will make a link. I'll leave a link down below, for that link, just so that you guys that haven't seen that video can learn the theory and the ideas and the strategy behind it. See you in the next one. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of February in 2024. You guys have been amazing. I'm extremely blessed to have you guys as part of the Patreon family. There's exclusive benefits that you gain by becoming a member. So, I highly recommend that you check it out and consider it. It's been great to, hang out and get to know the patrons that have joined thus far. And I hope to see you there soon. Have a good day.